Good evening, everybody. So the first speech is, in a way, a kind of long, meandering introduction to the second speech, or rather the topic of the second speech, so to say. And you have some vocabulary there in the chats, so there's no need for me to go through it again with you. So I may as well just begin now. Ladies and gentlemen, I went to university in the west of Ireland, in a lovely, quaint and charming town called Galway. I was lucky enough to have some very impressive educators there. Chief among them was one of my Spanish to English translation professors. This man was eloquently spoken. He was a very talented translator, but he did lord in himself his greatness over people a bit too much. The man was completely oblivious to this fact and had no idea. He really seemed like he didn't really perceive people's reactions to him. I grew up in a pub in the west of Ireland as well, not very far from a train station. And it was almost a family pastime to observe human interaction. It was part and parcel of the environment, in a way. I've always been fascinated by human interaction, and I still am. So this man really did interest me. Now, he's not alone in his behavior. We all know somebody like this man, somebody who's a bit out of touch with reality, but brilliant. Jordan Peterson speaks of people like this. He wonderfully describes them in a way which he says is the arrogance of the intellect. He borrows a metaphor from Nietzsche's "Thus spoke Zarathustra." There's a scene in the novel where Zarathustra descends from a mountain into a village. He noticed a large crowd congregating around a midget who had a massive ear. He tries to depict here that you can be exceptionally developed in one area in life, but almost paralyzingly underdeveloped in other areas. I give you that little introduction because in honor of that man, because he always told me that you should never begin an argument with a definition. It's a one surefire way to lose the respect of your audience, he always told me. And I really respected that man, so that's the preamble there in respect of him. But now here's the definition. Arrogance is defined as an attitude of superiority, manifested in an overbearing manner or in presumptuous claims or assumptions. Now, hearing that, instinctively, I imagine, you're thinking, okay, that's not something that should be tolerated, let alone promoted in society. There is a lot of misconception around arrogance, and often confidence gains a bad reputation because it's clumped in together with arrogance. But confidence is a very different thing. Confidence is knowing your value. It's knowing what you stand for, what you don't stand for, and what you will not compromise on, among other things. Promoting confidence can only be beneficial to society. On the other hand, promoting arrogance is toxic for our societies. Carl Jung, again, addressed this very well in his work, The Relations Between the Ego and the Unconscious, in which he speaks of ego inflation. Essentially, he says, as you move up a hierarchy, human beings have the potential to have their ego inflate, to match, he says, the hypothetically perceived position of status. Jung argues that people often take on the archetype that they're in and boast about it as being a personal achievement, some kind of personal construct or a personal invention. Jung warned about this. He warned very strongly against this. He himself was accused of being some kind of cult leader, something that he was not. But he did have a strong following. And he said himself that he was tempted to fall into this type of thinking. He said that he knew if somebody rises in a hierarchy, it is because the archetype is operating through them. As a result of that, he argues, a person cannot take credit for that. He says that it's very important to separate your personality from the archetype that you are in. Not doing so is shallow, short-sighted, and if it's not disingenuous, then it really should be. But we human beings are extraordinary in our arrogance. Look at our current geological epoch. It's known as the Anthropocene epoch. Now, some epochs in history last up to 40 million years. This new one dates back to just a mere 400 years. And some scientists say that it's only 75 years old, saying that it started when atomic weapons began dusting the planet with an evanescence of strange radioisotopes. In any case, this particular epoch is characterized by human arrogance. Today, every year, we spew more than 100 times the amount of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere as volcanoes do. We are currently overseeing the biggest disruption to the planet's nitrogen cycle that we've seen in 2.5 billion years. Still, we are framing this crisis in arguably an arrogant manner. We humans don't really understand ourselves. Much of the strife and pain that we experience in life with our interpersonal relationships is brought on by a lack of understanding. We claim when we're younger that our parents don't get us, that our friends don't get us when we get older, and that our partners don't understand us. And it causes us much strife and pain. But it's a bit ridiculous when you think about it, because we can't really expect other people to understand us when we don't fully understand ourselves at all. If we believe that we don't understand ourselves, it's interesting to see that we still place ourselves at the center of existence. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't change our actions, our behavior, and that we shouldn't be tackling climate change in the manner that we are, or indeed in a more effective manner than we are. That is something that, of course, we have to do. But I'm just repeating a used argument here when I say that we're not saving the planet, really. The planet has been around for over 4.5 billion years, and humans, arguably, for 300,000 years. Dinosaurs roamed the Earth for over 180 million years and enjoyed utter dominance of this planet during that time. That's 36 times longer than recorded humanity. And now, look around us. What remnants do we have of their time? Apart from a few freaky birds and reptiles, perhaps. Not much. So, like I say, it's a hackneyed argument almost at this stage. We're not saving the planet. The planet's going to be fine. We're saving ourselves, and indeed we should save ourselves. But human beings are fascinating creatures. Our arrogance is not just demonstrable as a species, but rather we like to go the extra mile, and we like to be arrogant within our own species. And my God, are we good at that? We've all seen, I imagine at this point, the repugnant video of George Floyd's murder. And his funeral was yesterday, a very poignant moment. There's a lot we can say on that, but I won't for now, because we could speak for hours and hours about it. Now, please don't take my words this evening and don't misconstrue them as some type of self-righteous pontification, as easy as that may be. Because I certainly have suffered from arrogance in the past, and perhaps I still do sometimes, unbeknownst to myself. Perhaps we all do. And I choose the verb there tactically, suffer, because I do believe that it is an ailment. I think that it is an affliction. And as such, positively, it is something that can perhaps be isolated, addressed, and overcome. And considering the atmosphere and the events that we're seeing around the world right now, perhaps it's high time that we do that. What do you think yourselves?